Good morning. So it's very early this morning and I'm just going to this health psychology event. I'm not sure what to expect. It's quite dark on this side, but I'm looking forward to it and I'll tell you how it goes. So have a blessed day and stay tuned.
Hello, welcome back to this channel, Something Worth Seeing, where we help others help themselves. So this video is all about health psychology. So on the 30th of January, I went to a careers event and it was called The Journey to Becoming a Psychologist. And in this event, it was just showing how different people had gone to different routes in actually becoming a health psychologist, or what they used in their health masters, like using their health masters in order to go to different routes, different careers. So that was quite helpful, and it was hosted by the Midland Health Psychology Network. So if you're looking for further events, you can check them out, because I think they're having a conference in Derby, and I'll put the link below underneath. I'm not sure if I'm going to that, but it's just good to know, if you're interested in health psychology, that there's different events, there's different opportunities for you to meet other people, and also for you to get an insight in health psychology and also in different areas of psychology. Because this year, one of my aims was to attend more psychology related events, to attend talks, workshops, or whatever that may be. And so far I've attended, I think it's 3 or 4 psychology related events, and next week I'm going to go to a talk. So hopefully that's going to be helpful, because I think, you know, as of now, anything can happen in the world, but I really think I want to pursue a career in psychology, whatever that may be. So I want to become more acquainted with it. I want to learn from others, and also to hear about different people's experiences in psychology, because it's been so helpful thus far, you know, of the events I've gone to, just to hear different insights about different ways. Because what you'll find out is, when you go to events, you really see that people's routes, let's just say people's routes to health psychology or clinical, everyone's route is very different. So it just gives you an insight of just the different ways you can go in becoming a psychologist, or if you want to be an academic psychologist, just hearing from different people. So I just find it useful, and I would really recommend, you know, if you have an interest in psychology, try to go to events, try to go to conferences, and just different things which will give you an insight of psychology. Because we know many people had really emphasized that the road to psychology, or to become a psychologist, can be a very lonely road, because it's very, you have to be determined, and there's a lot of things you have to do in regards to experience. Like, people may not understand, you know, you've graduated and you're going for a role which doesn't pay as well. Not everyone will understand that, but we know to become a psychologist you have to have a lot of experience. And so with that said, I just want to talk about how there's different areas in psychology, and then I'll talk about, you know, how to actually become a health psychologist, and then afterwards just give you some insights of the event I went to, and, you know, the things that really stood out to me and the things that I learned. So in psychology, there's so many areas, so many branches of psychology. So there's clinical, there's health psychology, there's educational psychology, there's neuropsychology, there's academics, there's research, there's forensic, there's social, and there's probably ones which I haven't even mentioned. But there's even as well in psychology, because it's growing and people are really seeing the need for psychology today in society, there's actually been areas in psychology which are developing. So now I think there's something called cyber psychology. So there's just different areas and different routes to psychology. But but in the UK, the one that I think most people know about is the clinical psychology route, because that is the route in psychology which is funded. So health psychology isn't funded, other areas may not be funded, but the clinical psychology route is actually funded. So I think that's what makes it more tasteful for people, because as well it's funded, and not everyone can, you know, afford to to go into different areas of psychology, but it is very, very, very competitive. And hopefully in my next video I'll talk about, you know, clinical psychology, because I went to an event called Is Clinical Psychology for Me? So yeah, in the UK the clinical psychology is funded by the NHS. And so when you go into training as a trainee clinical psychologist, you're actually paid. So that is why I think it's the area in psychology which people mostly want to get into, and because of that funded, attractive look, it's many people want to do it. But I had to be asking myself, you know, after I finished, and it's constantly asking myself, you know, if everything in this world was funded, what would I go for? But of course, you know, there are restrictions in that, because if you literally can't afford it, you may have to change your career and things like that. But I have been asking myself, and I have been going to different events. I have been kind of seeing what areas of psychology that I'm more drawn into and what I would like to be. So of course it's an ongoing road, it's an ongoing process, and you never know where I'll end up career-wise, but it's just nice to think and to see how many options there are in psychology, because it's quite interesting as well, because I've been seeing that most people, when they have a psychology degree, they actually don't go into psychology. So it's been interesting as well just to see that. And but I think personally that I would like to pursue a career in psychology. So with health psychology, it's about using your psychological and your knowledge of health to actually promote healthy lifestyles and to promote health and well-being. So as a health psychologist, you're actually promoting health and well-being, and that could be, you know, helping someone to stop smoking, help someone to lose weight, help someone with obesity. It can be anything. It could be, you know, helping the old people who feel, you know, they're in a stage where they would like to get active but they don't have a support group. So that could be an area of psychology. So also another route of psychology could be to improve the healthcare system. So let's say there's a doctor and patients. Actually, a health psychologist could be that person which bridges the gaps between the doctor and also the client, to help the doctor to find useful ways in order to make an effective healthcare system. So health psychology is very broad, and I've just given you like a little definition of what health psychology is. But you don't have to work in a hospital, you can work in different places in order to be a health psychologist. But the question could be, you know, how do I become a health psychologist? Becoming a health psychologist with other routes like counselling, clinical. Once you come out of your degree, it doesn't stop there. You have to get further experience or further training. It all depends which route you have to go to. But with health psychology, you actually do have to get a master's, and I'll talk about that in some bits. So first, step one is, you know, you have to have a degree in psychology, so BSc psychology, which is accredited by the BPS, and that has to be a 2-1 or above mostly. And when you get that degree, it has to also have a GBC. So I'll write all the full names of what I'm saying. So the thing is as well, if you hadn't studied psychology in undergrad, you could then do a conversion course, and that would mean, you know, it's accredited with the BPS. So if you haven't done a undergrad in psychology, you'll then do a you'll now do a accreditation course, and that would give you the BPS and also the GPC. So yes, let's say now you got a 2-2. It's not the end of the world. What you would have to do is just basically get a master's and make sure you get a merit or a distinction, and then you're okay to go. But, you know, just normally you got an undergrad, and then once you've got the undergrad, you get a master's, so an MSc in health psychology, and that has to be as well accredited by the BPS. So that master's in health psychology would now be called a stage 1 in becoming the health psychologist that you wanted to be. So this master's is required to give you all the knowledge for stage 1, but then to actually become a psychologist, you'll then have to go on to stage 2, and this can be in different ways. You can go to a university and get a stage 2 in the doctorate in health psychology, and this is usually 2 years. and I know the University of Staffordshire do it, and sometimes Staffordshire actually do some funding, because on the talk that I went to, one of the guys who were in the stage 2, he actually got funding, but not all places do funding, and I think the funding is actually probably just for one student, so it's very far, and it's not, the funding is not accessible to a lot of people. So yes, you start with stage 1, which is a master's in health psychology, then stage 2 would be a doctorate in health psychology, and that is stage 2. So Staffordshire University do it, I think it's Liverpool John Moore University do it, and the University of West England I think also do it, and maybe one in Glasgow do stage 2. But if you thought to yourself, I don't want to go to university to get this stage 2, you could actually get it independent, and you would have to go to the BPS website and then get a stage 2 through there. So you'd have to pay separately, find a supervisor, make sure the supervisor is approved, then you'd have to go to the steps. But as you're doing the doctorate, everyone needs to have a placement in order to do the doctorate, because there are some points which I wrote down, which I want to read out, because when you're doing the doctorate, that you're going to be marked on professional practice, psychological intervention, research, consultancy, and teaching and training. So when you do the stage 2 in health psychology, those are the 5 areas you'll be marked on. So it's wise to have a placement. So you can do it without a university, but you'd have to pay separately to the BPS, and also make sure that your supervisor is approved. And you can find a supervisor that is approved on the RAPS website. I'll put all the links below, but I've just been doing some research in regards to health psychology, because I'm not sure whether I'm still thinking of what area to specialize in, and I guess it also depends where life leads me. But I've been doing research in different areas of psychology, and I found that this is the way to go. So you would have to do that, make sure the person's approved, find a placement, and then on stage 2 you are then a trainee health psychologist. But after you finished, you will then have to so this type of psychology, the doctorate, will allow you to have the HCPC, and I think that stands for Health and Social Care, Health and Care Professional Council. So that would what you would have to be. That's what you would be. So for you to be a practicing health psychology, you have to have the HCPC, but without that you can't. And I just want to leave in something for you as well, because before I actually came to this event, I actually thought that if you got a PhD in health psychology, then you could actually be a practicing health psychologist. But actually that isn't the case. If you get a PhD, and if you get a PhD in health psychology, that would just make you an academic health psychologist. And to actually get a PhD in health psychology, you actually don't need a master's. You can actually just go with a 2-1 straight to a PhD. So you actually don't need a master's. But that was something that I had to think of, because I thought, PhD actually makes you a doctor. So I thought, you'd be practicing. But the doctorate that I'm talking about, which would allow you to be a practicing health psychologist, is actually a professional doctorate and not a PhD. So just bear that in mind, that if you're thinking, I want to be a health psychologist, I'm going to get a PhD, and then afterwards I'm going to be allowed to practice, that is not going to be the case. I think the only university in the UK that I've seen, and if anyone knows of others, you can put in the comments, which actually give you the ability to actually be an academic psychologist and also a practicing health psychologist, is Surrey University. And I know they have a 4-year course, and that 4-year course will allow you to have the professional doctorate but also give you the PhD. So that's the only university that I'm aware of that gives you both of the titles, let's say that. So basically that is a journey to becoming a health psychologist. But I would also advise that through that, gain your experience, work in different groups, volunteer, just do things, because you know, if you want to get the doctorate and things, I think it would be good to have some work experience, probably even a real life job. Or if you're studying at undergrad, the best time is literally just volunteer, get your experience in, and make sure you have a work, you can say you've worked, because I know with the academic health psychology, you don't really need that much experience to be accepted, like hands-on experience. But I think for the professional doctorate, you probably would have to have some work life previous to that in order to get on. But correct me on that if that's not the case. But I know for other ones, you need to kind of show like why you want to do it, and that is usually shown through the experience and works that you've done in the past, and also your passion, because you know, having a passion as well for something is a good way to start. So now I just want to tell you about the event I went to. So we had different talks, and one was so just a background. So everyone who was speaking on this event had done their masters in health psychology, and they've gone to different routes. So the first person, he was now a graduate teaching assistant, and this was now a 7-year role in university. So in that time he's doing his PhD, but he's also teaching, and I also think he's a qualitative lecturer, so it is a different route. So he got that while he was studying. He saw the opportunity and he applied, and you know, he had to have an interview and all things like that, so he was successful. So that's how he used his health psychology master degree in what he's doing now. But you know, that may not be for everyone, so there's different people. So the next person, she was a research assistant, and she actually got that job because before that she was working in something else, and it turned out to be, you know, the worst year of her life. And she just actually came back, you know, emailed all the people she knew, and she became a research assistant. She was actually volunteering at first, and then later on it became a paid position. So now she's a research assistant, but now she's actually going on to her PhD. And she was saying, you know, if she hadn't got the health psychology master, she wouldn't know like which areas to go into. And she was a research assistant for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And yeah, so she also did freelance research assistant jobs as well. So that was also helpful to know. And then there were 2 stage 2 trainee health psychologists, and I found it really interesting because there was a girl and there was a guy, and yeah, so she basically works in a housing association and she's doing her stage 2. And I found that was really interesting because, you know, if I was thinking of being a trainee and getting a placement, that wouldn't come to mind. And it just really showed me how vast health psychology is, because we may think, you know, oh, clinical hospital, helping people promote their health, people with illnesses and things like that. But she's working in a housing association, so she was actually a research assistant for that job. And then, you know, she went into the trainee health psychology, and then she was now so she's now training as a health psychologist and also doing that job in the housing association. So I found it interesting because it's all about having a wide view of how can I put health psychology in the job I'm doing. So I found that very helpful. And then we had a talk from the careers advisor, and one thing that really stood out to me was having experimental knowledge. So having experience, of course, we may need a degree, we may need the masters in order to help us pursue, but it was all about experience. What employers are looking for someone to have an experience. So yes, this video was about health psychology and the journey to becoming a health psychologist. So I've got a question for you. So if everything in psychology was funded, what route would you go to? Because when I've been graduating, so I graduated last year, and that was really what I was thinking to myself, what would I do if everything was funded? So leave a comment below. Hope you found this helpful, and if you have any questions, let me know. But I'm hopefully the next video is going to be, the next education related video is going to be about is clinical psychology for me. So if you have any questions, which you would like me to answer in the next video, please leave it down below, and have a blessed day.
Greetings. So I just came from an event called Clinical Psychology for me, and it was such a lovely event, very encouraging, and I'm gonna share some tips with you of what I learned and how the day went. But yes, it was a free event, and you guys know that, well, if you've been to a psychology event before, you know that most psychology events aren't free. So this one was free, and it was in King's College. So as you can see, I'm in London. So yes, see you later, and I'll keep you updated.
And this was Something Worth Seeing, where we help others help themselves. Bye.